Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful. I'm back in the studio today working on MELAINE'S journal. So if you're just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I do put a link to the entire playlist down in the description along with other related videos that I've referenced and also any kind of tools or materials or things that I've mentioned in the videos. I do keep a running list down in the description so that it just grows as the playlist grows. So today I want to focus on one of the things that I've been working on in this journal. I'm doing a journal, if you haven't been following, for my sister's best friend, Melaine. And I'm using a vintage book that was titled The Hurricane. So I've just been including things that will be a place for her to collect memories and journal and that sort of thing. And I've mentioned before that she's also an artist. So I've made this one sort of a hybrid journal in that I've included, along with using digitals and different types of papers, I've included some art paper, and she'll find that throughout. I also have now added some other bits of different types of papers in some of the pockets. So I think I'll cover all the things that I've done maybe in a final flip through, which may be the next video or so. But today I wanted to spend a little time just on specimen envelopes and different types of envelopes to make that you can include in a journal that you're giving to someone to fill up. One of the things that I know she likes to do is just collect little things, you know, when you're out walking. She's like, I do the same thing, you know, picking little things up. And one of the things that I wanted to include for her was a place for her to put like pressed flower petals. Her husband brings her flowers all the time. And I know that although some of these envelopes and cards won't be large enough for an entire pressed flower, but she could maybe take petals from it or something and press those, include those within a place to journal. So that was kind of my thought about doing this next part. And I have included some different types in the journal that I'll show you, but then I wanted to show you actually how to easily make some. I used my Cricut maker to make my envelopes, but I've also just cut them by hand without a Cricut maker or any kind of cutting machine. And so that's what I want to show you today, how you can do similar envelopes just with paper and scissors. So I'm going to show you real quick some of the different finished ones that I've done. So I did some that are just a tag. So it's really just sandwiched into some thick cardstock that I had done with one of my bubble papers. And then I put a piece of sage from my yard in it, and then just stamped on it with ground espresso archival ink. So it kind of fit with the theme. So that's a simple thing to do with just acetate, recycled acetate or craft plastic. I'm using my recycled craft plastic from Cutting Stencils, and I have a bunch of it. So that's what I'm using for the little windows. So you just really sandwich your specimen between the windows and glue it with a frame that goes on both sides. So that's a simple thing to do. And then I have another one here that actually is an envelope where the specimen is in the front window of the envelope, but you see all the way through, so that if you want to see the back side, maybe your specimen is something that's interesting on both sides, you can see it, but then you can still put a card in here to journal on. So I've made some like that. This one was done on one of my grungy papers, and I do have videos in the description for how I do all these techniques. So I've just tucked this one here. And then this type, for this one, I just did the envelope, and I've also made some specimen tags so that I can, you know, just fill out where they came from. I was going to originally, since I did these on my Cricut, do a print and cut, and then that way it would just be printed on the envelope. And I may still do something like that at some time, but this gave me more flexibility to just create a bunch of stickers. So I have done them in several different colors, and that way I can just stick them either on the envelope or on the card. And then this one I also did a little closure, like a banker's envelope. And then for this one, there's a window, but just in the front of the envelope. And then on the card, it was something that was pretty flat, so I didn't even put the plastic over it, and it works just fine going in and out. And I'll maybe go over these more when I do a final flip through. So that's a different type. where you just have a window on the front. So these are ones that I have, already kind of put the little specimen in, but I want to also send her ones that don't have a specimen so that she can add to. So this one is a little bit larger and it has just a larger window. So there's no room for the description on this, but you could put it on the tag. Maybe your specimen goes on one side and on the back you can put a little sticker or just write. So this again is one of my grungy papers that I made. So this is a thinner paper. So you can use anything from, cardstock to create these envelopes to paper works fine also. This is a larger type of specimen, more the size of a large bookmark. And that was just because the specimen I had was that shape and very delicate and large. Again, it's just sandwiched between the craft plastic and then a couple of cardstock thicknesses, again, of one of my original papers that is with my coffee techniques and salt and all that. And then also I like to do these little kind of like cellophane envelopes. And these are great to just add maybe things that are bulkier that you don't want to sandwich. And then also so that I can send her other little goodies and papers and scraps and things in this type of envelope. So I'll show you how I made one of these too. And then we'll go over all those other little details that you can see. If you've been following along, there's some things you haven't seen in here. And then let's see, I think, do I have any more? This one is a file folder shape. So again, a place to put maybe a card with a window in it, or a card like I did the little pine scale where you just slip that in. So to do a file folder size, you would just cut a large rectangle, fold it where you're leaving the file folder where you'd put a label. Use your corner punch, and I use this We Are Memory Keepers corner punch. There'll be a link down below. It has 3 different sizes. So for this type size, I would usually use, I think, the largest or the middle size one. This is the largest one to round those corners. And then I also put a little gusset in that, and you've seen me do this a million times. You would want to do all your inking or stamping and all of that before you put the craft plastic in. But then you just make a little piece of paper that you fold and then you glue it. And that way you have, instead of gluing this together, you're gluing the paper on either side, and it just gives you a little bit more room in your folder. I've added some more pockets. Here's another one that I had a wing, and I wanted to do that and where you could see both sides. So I did the acetate and then punched through the back as well. And I'll show you how you can do this style. So that way you can see the wing both sides, but then you still have a journal card. And you can, decorate your journal cards or leave them blank, depending if you're doing this for yourself or, to journal on later, or it's going to someone else who's going to use the journal. And I think that might be it for specimen cards. Okay, so that's it. I will go through all of the other goodies that I've done later, but what I wanted to do is show you how you can easily make these with or without a Cricut maker or some other type of cutting machine. So when you use a cutting machine, the pattern that I made is, let's see, this is what the cutout looks like after what I have left over. And I saved this because there are usable parts. And it's my, these are coffee stain papers. So I'll punch circles or squares that I can then, kind of collect in here to have for other things. I've got this one, and then I have one of circles. So I saved this, but this is what my pattern ended up looking like. I can do 2 envelopes and 2 cards. And then you also left with the squares that were cut out too. So that's what my pattern looks like. So I've done a variety here so that I can send these to her, and I'll kind of show you because I've done some different variations. So in order for me to send these so that she can add in, I wanted to go ahead and you put the plastic in. So some of them I inked, some of them I didn't. These I did on coffee stained or tea stained cardstock, I think 110 pound cardstock. And then again, I used my Samsel craft plastic. If you have watched me for a while, you know that this is what I use to, it's just Samsel clear craft plastic sheets. I'll put a link down below. This is what I use to cut my stencils. And I always have scrap because they're 12 by 12 sheets. And a lot of times my stencils are 8 by 10, 9 by 12. So I save the cutoff part and then I have it for things like this. So this one, I cut the envelope, you can see, because I have the rounded corners with my Cricut, put it together. And then I also have a separate sheet in my Cricut where I have cards like this that have a window on one side so that she can put the specimen in and then glue this up. And it's still a card you can write on the back. But this allows her to do whatever decorating or anything she wants to do before she puts the specimen in. And then it would go in the envelope that also has a window in the front. So that is one style that I did. This one you can see I did a little bit more to it just to kind of give you an idea. This one just has a plain card. And this one you would have to put the specimen on the card. It wouldn't have the acetate over it, the craft plastic, but it would go in. So if you're doing something flat that you can glue down flat, or a photo or something like that, then it's more like a little picture frame sort of deal. This one, I did some stitching on my sewing machine before I put it together, just for another little detail. And again, I used the same stamp set that I had, but in black to go with the black thread that I had. So just another little simple idea. Then this one is just another one, but this one I did, instead of solid on one side, it's for a specimen that you want to see the front and the back. So maybe a flower petal or something like that you put in, or a feather or a wing like I found. And then that way you can take it out and look at both sides. So I've done, I have a pattern for ones that have windows on both sides, and then the solid with the window on the other side. And you can do these if you're doing them on a Cricut like I am. You can make these windows all kinds of shapes too. They don't have to be square. This one is just again, just left plain with just a card. I'll show that one in a second. This one, let's see what I did here. This one, oh, this one I didn't do. This is one that you, if you're not using a Cricut, or even if you are, if you cut the pieces separate, and then you would just stack them and glue them together. And then I had a bunch of extra cards because these are, when I cut my envelopes, each one cut 2 cards, but then sometimes I use the other sheet that had the window card. So now I have some extra cards that I can send with it. This one is just one that I did, and I didn't glue the plastic on yet, and I've just kind of bound it here together for her because she may, depending on how she wants to use this one. So I've included the little craft plastic squares in here, but they're not attached. And then this is another one with my grungy papers again. And this one is a see-through to both sides. So it's done like this again. So that way she'll have kind of a variety to collect different things, and still has the freedom to kind of decorate up the envelopes and the cards first. And then I did a little larger than this one, so you can do them in different sizes, just whatever might fit in your pockets. And then this one, I did this one on my Cricut also, and just used the oval shape. So you can do it with a photo. And again, I just did the 2 pieces. I went ahead and put the plastic on. That way these can just be glued together after the fact. So this just kind of gave a variety, and I may do a few more, I don't know. But that's what I have to send her. Now this one is one that's a little bit different. And this one has, I wanted to show while it wasn't put together, this one has how you would do one that has the window in the back. So I'm going to show you how to make the envelope first, and then I can kind of walk you through how I would do one like this. But this is ready to go for her to be able to add her specimen, and then you need this extra piece of plastic, and then close it all up after the fact. So I'll address this one again in a second after I've made one. So this is going to be how I make this envelope. Would go the same with even making these envelopes. They're going to be the same sort of pattern. This one is made with my tea stained or coffee stained tracing paper, and that kind of gives you that vintage type of envelope that you'd put like little sample things in. But candy, you know, used to go to the candy place and it would be a little envelope kind of like this that you'd get. So I've made a bunch of different sizes of those too. And these you don't even have to measure when you're doing it. But I'm going to kind of give you an idea of the measurements that I did to make this exact size of an envelope. So I started out with just a piece of my cardstock, and this one measures 5 inches by 5 1/4 inches. So this is 5 1/4 this way by 5. And this, so it's going to be, this is the height and this is my width. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, this is going to make my envelope. It should be a 2.5 inch wide envelope. That's what I'm aiming for. And then roughly 4 inches tall. So to start, I want to find where my folds are going to be. And so I'm going to measure, I have my 5 1/4. And I know I want 2.5, so I'm going to measure, I think it ended up being like 1 3/8, if I'm correct. So if I go in 1 and 1 2 3/8, let me see if that made my 2.5. Yes. Okay, so for a 5 1/4, you go 1 3/8 in on either side, and I've made just a little mark. Now I'm going to use my cutting mat because it has a grid on it, and I think that'll make it easier. So I just want to find a line here. That way I can make my fold straight. And I have my mark here, so I know that it's the same line here. So I'm just going to take a metal ruler and I'm going to flip it over because I have cork on this one. And I'm going to line it up at that line here and where that mark is. And then you can kind of just fold this up. If you have a bone folder or some kind of fold thing like this, then you can kind of push that against the ruler and it will kind of give you a score mark. If you have a scoreboard, you could do that. But I'm trying to just show if you don't have a lot of fancy tools. So you can see I kind of made my score mark. And then I'll fold that over. And then same thing on the other side. So I'm going to, again, line this up on a straight line and put my mark where I have a vertical line. And line my ruler up. And then again, fold that up. Now, if I want to be really accurate, I can measure my top and bottom. I usually just eyeball it. But the thing that I need to, if I'm going to put a window in this, I kind of want to know, I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that window. I kind of need to know how big my lower flap can be. And the reason for that is, and I'll show you, we're going to do this with a square punch. You can, you can use a square, you can use a heart, you can use a round one. But the trick is you want to measure something on this. So let me get a scrap of paper. You want to do a practice punch on just a scrap of paper. Because I need to know this measurement. Because my envelope, when I have this folded up, I want to be able to put that punch in there, punch that without punching my bottom flap. So I need to know what this is. And every stamp might be different. So I'm going to look at this one. And this is, oh gosh, it's going to be a weird amount. So I'm going to say it's a little over, we're going to call it a little over 1/2 inch. And I don't mind if it's exact. I just know that if I do a 1/2 inch flap, that will work. Okay. So I could either make a mark here and fold this now, and then I know I'm exact. So I'm going to go ahead and find my 1/2 inch and make a little mark. And then do the same thing. I'm going to line this up. Of course, if I make my mark here, it will be better. So let's do it here. Let me make my mark where I can see it better. That way I can line that mark up to a vertical line and line this up. And then same thing, I'll make a fold at the 1/2 inch. This is a little harder because this is small, so maybe I go the other direction here. Okay, so I have my sides, I have my flap, and then I need to also do the top. So this is where I can decide how tall I want my envelope. If I want it to be 4 inches, I know that's going to be where the flap is. So I can make it 4 inches. And that gives me also a 1/2 inch flap. Now, if I want my flap to be larger than the bottom, which sometimes I like to do, I could have made this 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 or 5 1/2, made it a bigger, instead of my 5 inches tall, I could have made it 5 1/4 or 5 1/2, and then I would have had a larger size flap. So you don't really, like I said, have to measure. But if you have certain requirements, like say you want to put a button for your closure or something like that, you might need it to be larger than this 1/2 inch that we have. So just take those into consideration when you make your own. But that's what kind of the beauty of it is. If you know what your design is kind of going to be and you want some type of button closure thing, you could make it fit, or if it has to fit in a certain pocket or something like that. Okay, so these just worked out where they're the same top and bottom. Okay, so then the next thing, I have all my folds. The next thing I want to do is I want to take, and I don't want to crease it, but I want to, where those 2 side folds are, I want those to meet. So, but I don't want to crease my envelope. So I'm going to just kind of put it there. Actually, you can even do these individually since I did the fold. You can just cut one side and then the other if you want. So I'm going to cut. And then if you want this to be even, you want to take, this is the part that we're going to remove, but I want to do it at a slight angle. So I'm going a little bit from here, I'm going beyond my fold, and then I'm cutting to where that meets. So I'm going to start a little inside just to make a little angle there. And then I can also cut these rounded. You can cut them straight if you want, but I kind of like to do them rounded. And then that would be my, you see how it doesn't, it gives you room to be able to fold this up comfortably. So that's my bottom fold. And then you're just going to do the same thing on the top. I think I'll do these separate. It's easier. This is thicker. If you're just using paper, it's not quite as thick. And then I can even cut these separately if I want. Just do the angle. The other side. And then I do like to fold it to make that rounded part. And that one is not as rounded. So maybe I want that to be my bottom. And then that would be my flap. So I do like to make my flap a little bit bigger. So I would have made that, 5.5 or whatever it is. Okay, so now I have the base. Now how do you get the window in there? So if you're going to do a larger one, you would just use an X-Acto knife and your metal ruler and just, cut that shape out. Like I said, if you have punches, you can punch it. So I'm going to go ahead. I can fold this up because I measured that and I know my punch is not going to encroach on it. So now I can just take my punch and try to make it, try to get it centered. So if you make a mark somewhere that you can see where the center, there I have a little arrow there. So maybe I want to find, if I want it to be perfect, I would try to make a mark that I'm going to be able to see. This is 2.5 wide, so I'm going to do it at 1.25 inches as my center. So just make sure it's all the way down, and then if you can see that, I don't know. I can see that little mark, and then there's a little arrow for my center. And just kind of line that up and punch. And now I have another little square scrap I can use. And I can use this if I took my little, around these corners maybe. And then I could punch a little hole, maybe using my little small one. And that would make a cute little tag of some kind. So we'll save that. And then you can see I don't encroach on that. So now I have an envelope that has a window just in the front. And then I could, if I wanted, I've cut a card already. I made it a little bit smaller all the way around than my envelope. And I can do the same thing. I like to round my corners of this. And I'll maybe use the middle one for this. But I can do the same thing, and I can plop this in here. Find my center, I would mark it. And then I could punch a square in this and then make a solid one and do that type. Or just leave this solid, so I'm going to leave that for now. And then if I wanted to make this so that I can see the envelope through all the way, I would just take this and punch again through the back side. And then it goes through all those pieces. So I'm not going to do that for this one. Then to put it together, what I like to use, I cut my plastic 1/4 inch because I want to use 1/4 inch double stick tape. It's just the cleanest way to do it. If you're using an odd shape, like a heart or a circle even, you need to use glue so that you get around the edge all the way to the inside edge here, but then all the way to the outside edge of your plastic, so that when you're putting a card in and out, there's nothing loose that you're going to get caught on. So I like to use the tape as much as I can because it's just a cleaner way of doing it. I don't have to worry about any glue coming out. So I use the 1/4 inch tape, and I just go around the edge of the window, not on the plastic. I do it on the actual envelope, so that I make sure I get it right to the edge and I don't have any peeking out. If I were to put it on the plastic, it might not line up exactly, and then I would see that. So what I do is I cut a piece of plastic, and this one is not the right size for this envelope. I would measure my opening, which in this case, it's 1.75 inches. And I would make sure my plastic is a 1/2 inch larger so that I get that 1/4 inch on either side. So in this case, if I'm 1.75 inches, I want it to be 2.25, a 2.25 inch square of plastic for this one. And then I would just add my tape and then peel it off, put the plastic on. So I can, if you decorate all this first, do whatever you want to it, and then put the plastic on, you're ready to go for your project. So if I'm going to send these to Melaine to fill up and decorate, then I want to have them as prepared as I can, but still open for her. So for that, what I did is I went ahead and I put down my first piece of plastic, and then I'm going to send her that piece that's now floating around here somewhere. Is it this one? Let's see if that's the right size. Yes, that's the right size. So I would send her with the first plastic in, and then if you can see, I've put tape on top of that plastic that she can now remove that backing once she has her specimen in here, and then put the second piece will stick to the first piece. So that gives her her front window with the specimen in it sandwiched together. And then you need a window on the back side. So I went ahead and I just put tape just around one side, the side that I want to close first, and attached the square. And then on the other side, I put the plastic or the tape around, but then also up this edge so that when she's ready to close it, she would do this, take this tape off, and now the back's closed. And then just use a little bit of glue stick to close that. And then you're able to put your card in and out this way. So that's how I can send this to her all ready to go. And then I'll add a card, but I just kind of tied it up with this little piece of lace so that it can get there. So that is how you would make your envelope by hand. So this one I did with the Cricut. But you can see this one I just cut by hand. So it's that simple. And again, like I said, you can do these with any type shape punch that you have. And then you have this cute little tag as well. And then when I did these, they worked out so that my stickers that I made, I can fit that on the top of the envelope if I want. So that was just a way for me to kind of be able to mass make some of these things, was to do them on the Cricut. So I think what I might do is, if you're interested, if you do have a Cricut maker and you are interested in that pattern, let me know. And I think I can share it with a link. I think I might be able to do that. So let me know down in the comments if you'd like that. Otherwise, you see that it's almost as easy to do it without the machine. That way you waste less paper and you can make them any size that you want. So I hope that that is a helpful hint for you and that you enjoyed that little tutorial. Like I said, I will show you some of the other things that I've added, some ideas for pockets and that kind of thing, probably in the next video. So that's it for today. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.